It's Randy Orton.
I have voices in my head. They counsel me. They understand. They talk to me.
Hey guys, what is up? It's Mr. Beetle 890 here, and today I'm coming at you with a video that I did when Daniel Bryan retired, and I thought I would do it here. Like with the Daniel Bryan video, I gave it a few days before I really sort of gave my opinion and stuff. And with this, it's taken me a few days to sort of let it sink in, and I would say I've still not really fully kind of accepted it, I think. But it has happened. Obviously, the Undertaker's WWE career appears to be over, and I'm assuming everyone at least knew that already, or saw WrestleMania 33, saw the match with Roman Reigns. So I just want to make a video sort of talking about my thoughts on the retirement, and just sort of reflecting on his career as well, in my opinion, because the Undertaker's career is something that not many wrestlers in terms of length have had consistently throughout their career. And debuting in 1990 at the Survivor Series as a mystery partner for Ted DiBiase's team in the Survivor Series elimination match. Yeah, the original Undertaker gimmick I always thought was, and this applies throughout the whole thing, it's always been a gimmick that's been over with the fans, because I think that's mainly down to just the Mark Calloway being able to make it, just keeping it fresh, making sure that it holds up throughout, was it the 27 years he's been almost in the WWE, WWF. So when he first came in, obviously it was, his gimmick didn't require him to kind of show off his in-ring abilities. I don't think, at the time, people would have really necessarily thought that The Undertaker was that great of a worker, because, his gimmick limited him to just not much movement. He didn't really sell much. He was pretty much like a zombie, in a sense. But him and Paul Bearer was an amazing pairing. For so long, they were just inseparable. Such an iconic pair, in my opinion. So it wasn't really until, because, I think a lot of the early Undertaker feuds weren't necessarily that great. Not just because of, the restricted gimmick, the gimmick kind of restricting him to, not doing much in the ring, but also just his opponents really weren't necessarily that great. I mean, you had people like King Kong Bundy, Giant Gonzalez, Mabel, that sort of thing. He never really had that many great feuds. I mean, he had some matches, Jimmy Snuka and Jake Roberts, which were pretty solid. But yeah, I feel it wasn't really until sort of '96 where the Undertaker really started to have some tremendous matches and was actually given capable in-ring opponents. He obviously, I think the first really good Undertaker match I can kind of think of is from his early period was Bret Hart in '96, the Rumble. That feud with Mankind throughout '96 and '97 was honestly one of his best. It may be his best feud. I think that's definitely up for debate. Undertaker's had so many great feuds throughout the years. In '97, as I said, he had some really great matches with like Shawn Michaels and Bret Hart. And going into '98, you obviously had stuff with like Austin, Kane, just some really, really incredible stuff. And then obviously you had, as well in '99, he was still, he's had that Ministry of Darkness gimmick, which I personally think is kind of overrated. It's not a terrible gimmick, if I'm being honest. Like, I think it's one of those things that it got a bit ridiculous, I think. But it was not, it definitely wasn't the worst of The Undertaker. I just think people kind of overrate it a bit. And then you had that sort of change in 2000 where he was out injured, and then he came back as the sort of American Badass, which it's a gimmick that a lot of people, it's quite divided. I mean, is it as good as his original gimmick? No. Is it a terrible gimmick? No, I thought the American Badass Undertaker gimmick was actually fine, especially the Big Evil period. But yeah, I mean, when he came back in 2000, he obviously was still, adjusting with that injury, so his sort of work wasn't that great. In the year of 2000, he didn't have that many great matches. 2001 as well, I think he was still sort of adjusting to an extent as well. I mean, you'll see he was involved in that DDP storyline that wasn't necessarily that great. But 2002, I thought was a great year for the Undertaker. The Big Evil heel gimmick was awesome. He had some great matches with the likes of Brock Lesnar, the Triple Threat of Vengeance. 2002, I think, was incredible. Match with Ric Flair as well at WrestleMania, I think is pretty underrated. The Undertaker was just someone who, in 2002, was just actually pretty awesome. I liked his run as the undisputed champion. As I said, the matches with Brock Lesnar, he really helped put Brock Lesnar over and make him into a huge, huge star. I think that's I think Undertaker deserves a lot of respect in that sort of sense. 2003, he wasn't a huge year for him. It was the end of the American Badass / Big Evil gimmick. I think they ended it at the right time, and then by 2004 he came back as the original Dead Man gimmick. So that was cool to see when he returned at WrestleMania 20. And in terms of 2004, because the SmackDown brand being quite poor, Undertaker didn't necessarily have that many great opponents. I mean, for God's sake, by the end of 2004, he was feuding with people like Heidenreich. God, yeah, that was just a dumb feud, wasn't it? But 2005, you had the feud with Randy Orton, which I thought was great and really helped Orton. Because Orton, I think, really didn't benefit from the Triple H sort of the defeat to Triple H and losing quite often to him. So I think him going to SmackDown, feuding with him feuding with The Undertaker, it really helped him put him on the map, even though he didn't necessarily win the match at WrestleMania or at Hell in the Cell. The win at SummerSlam, I thought, really helped put him over, though, in my opinion. 2006 wasn't, he had a really, really good match with Kurt Angle at No Way Out. And again, I think he suffered. It was, Undertaker, I think, throughout 2006, again, pretty solid. It was not an outstanding year for him, I don't think. But again, not a terrible year. 2007, I think, The Undertaker had a fantastic year. The feud with Batista. Unfortunately, he did suffer an injury, so I think that kind of held him back from having even more kind of great matches. And this is where we see the start of the Edge feud going into 2008, which was awesome. Awesome. Definitely one of my favourite Undertaker feuds. I think his feud with Edge was just fantastic. Again, it put Edge on the map. I mean, Edge was kind of put on the map from the Cena feud, but I think the Undertaker feud really cemented Edge, as sort of a top guy, in my opinion. I think the Undertaker Edge feud was one of the best, and I think if Chris Jericho and Shawn Michaels hadn't had their feud in 2008, that would have been probably feud of the year for 2008. 2009, he obviously had the epic match with Shawn Michaels at WrestleMania 25. That was just incredible. He took some time off, and then he had that feud with CM Punk, which it didn't really do CM Punk any favors, really, which is a shame. But we'll get on to CM Punk and The Undertaker later on, because that's far from over. So he was the world champion for a bit. He was fine there. He did end up dropping the belt in 2010 in the Elimination Chamber with Shawn Michaels, and they had an even better match, in my opinion, at WrestleMania 26. They did the whole vegetative state with Kane storyline, which I just thought revisiting Undertaker versus Kane in 2010 was just, I just don't think it was really worth it, and it just wasn't that great. And the match they had were just very, very poor, which is a shame, because in '98 was an awesome storyline, awesome feud, but in 2010 it just wasn't the same, really. And then obviously he took some time off, and this is where we start to get into sort of the part-time Undertaker period. So you had the match with Triple H in 2011 at WrestleMania 27. Epic, awesome match. One of the best streak matches. And then that would lead to the match at WrestleMania 28 inside Hell in the Cell. Even better, a fantastic match. Watching that live, it was just incredible. And then we got on to CM Punk and The Undertaker again, but this time at WrestleMania 29. That was fantastic. A really, really great match. Stole the show. WrestleMania 30, the streak came to an end. He lost to Brock Lesnar. I never thought he should have lost the streak. And I know it helped put Brock Lesnar over as a monster, but you could have done the Brock Lesnar monster push without him beating the Undertaker. He should have just come back in 2012 and just beat everyone, and not necessarily gone into a feud with the Undertaker, in my opinion. 2015, he then came back when a lot of people thought he was going to retire. Faced Bray Wyatt in a alright match. He had some great matches with Brock though in the summer and sort of autumn of 2015. Great SummerSlam match. Even better Hell in the Cell match. That was a fantastic Hell in the Cell. One of the better Hell in the Cell matches in recent times. And then in 2016, he faced Shane McMahon in a sort of scrambled to last minute put together feud, which I just think was really dumb. Really, it was a pretty good match, but to me it was just a sort of a waste of the Undertaker, in my opinion. And then obviously we get to this year with Roman Reigns, and I want to talk about this match actually because again it's had quite a divided opinion, this match. And you know what? I'm not that angry with Roman Reigns going over. I mean, especially the Undertaker's got that old school kind of mentality, hasn't he? Where it's kind of like, you know, you go out on your back, and you know, if Undertaker's sort of willing to put over Roman Reigns, then it's not that big of a deal in my opinion. And seeing that petition of like, oh, taking away his loss, it's just stupid. It's just quite sad. Like, just get over yourselves. Like, at the end of the day, it's a scripted entertainment show. Like, there's no need to sort of try to start petitions and try and revoke the loss. It's just dumb. It's just dumb. But yeah, the match, it wasn't anything outstanding, and I wasn't expecting it to be, especially considering Undertaker's state. You know, you could tell by the Royal Rumble, he didn't look great, and going into the feud with Reigns, it just wasn't. The match just wasn't anything that great. It wasn't bad, I don't think. I think what held this match together was the story they told in the match. So that was pretty good. It was quite sloppy at some points, which is a shame. I think it wasn't just Undertaker, but Roman as well. So yeah, it was what it needed to be, I guess. I was just sad the fact that was Undertaker's last match. In terms of match quality, and also just the feud going in was just incredibly just dull. I really think they could have put more effort into hyping up this match and, you know, saying it was Undertaker's last match. But the aftermatch, the post-match stuff was fantastic. A perfect way to go out for the Undertaker. You know, he leaves his hat, his gloves, his jacket, his boots in the ring. Just a great WrestleMania moment, a great way to end the pay-per-view. It was a great moment. I mean, watching it live, I was just sort of speechless. I just sort of was taking it all in, and I mean, personally, in terms of when the Undertaker should have retired and that sort of thing, I think after the Triple H match at WrestleMania 28 was probably the best way to go. In my opinion, I think. You know, they highlighted his end of an era. To me, that seemed like the perfect time. And you still could have done the whole thing with you leaving his hats and gloves and the boots in the ring, and then him, Triple H, and Shawn Michaels could all embrace on the stage. I think that would have been the best way to do it. But I mean, it's going to be incredibly tough to sort of get over this, because the Undertaker is someone who pretty much every wrestling fan has sort of grew up with or has experienced in some capacity being there. So I think a lot of people, you know, it's just gonna be, it's weird for me to think that there's gonna be a generation of wrestling fans who didn't even grow up with the Undertaker in any sort of capacity. It's just gonna be something that's gonna be really hard to get over. And I think even going into next year's WrestleMania, I'm gonna forget that the Undertaker's not gonna be there. I mean, he'll probably go into the Hall of Fame. I would assume he would, but in terms of matches, I just have to sort of get it out of my system that the Undertaker's never going to have a match again. That's just really sad to think, because, you know, the Undertaker's just someone who, he's definitely a wrestler I respect the most. He's one of the few sort of loyal wrestlers. You know, it's there's no, yeah, in not just in anything, in any sport, I think there's not really much loyalty anymore. And The Undertaker's just someone who's through thick and thin stuck with the WWF, WWE, was there from the start. Well, not the start, but you know what I mean. He's been there since 1990, never left, never jumped ship. You know, stuck there through thick and thin, and he's just someone I respect so much. And he's one of those people you never hear anyone you know, speak negatively of. He's just someone who, he's just the Undertaker, a gimmick that if you explain to someone who didn't necessarily know about wrestling, they may and on paper it doesn't sound great, but the Undertaker just made it work. You know, he was something else. Not and as a worker as well, someone that size being able to do what he does, it's incredible. So all I can say is I think just thank you, Undertaker, for all that you've done, and no one will ever forget what the Undertaker's legacy. No one will ever forget him. I mean, his legacy is truly, truly incredible. So thank you guys for watching. I hope you enjoyed this little sort of reflection of the Undertaker's career and my thoughts on his retirement. Follow me on my new Twitter, which is in the link now. It's my new Twitter, because basically my old account got locked. So yeah, I have a new Twitter account. It's in the description. Follow me on Ars.fm, like the video, comment below. And once again, thanks for watching, guys.